At Revenge Sins, we notice the moments that don't announce themselves with shouting. Sometimes it's a calendar invite that never arrives. Sometimes it's the way a family uses the word simple to mean not you. Noelle Parker teaches second grade outside Boston. Her experience matters because the thing that hurt wasn't a fight. It was being edited out of her own family's next chapter with a polite voice and a clean excuse. Here's where she starts. My phone buzzed while I was stapling spelling packets at my kitchen table. The same stack of paper. The same cheap stapler that jammed if I squeezed too hard. My apartment smelled like microwaved pasta and dry erase markers. Mom's name lit up the screen. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered. Hi, Mom. Her voice came through bright in that careful way. Noelle. Good. I caught you. I'm home. Perfect. So, New Year's Eve. A tiny pause like she was checking a script. This year is going to be a little different. I sat down slowly. Different how? We're keeping it. Elevated. She went on. Like that word solved everything. Serena is bringing Elliot. I heard my father's breathing in the background. He was on speaker, not saying a thing. Mom kept going. Elliot's people are wonderful. He's generous. He notices details. And Serena really needs this to go smoothly. Okay. My voice stayed even. It took practice to sound calm when I wasn't. Another pause. So we've decided it's best if you sit this one out. My fingers tightened around the phone. Sit it out. It's just one night, she added quickly. We'll do brunch another time. Something casual. Why? Mom exhaled like I was being difficult on purpose. Noelle, don't make it ugly. You know how things look. Things. You're a teacher, she said, softer, like she was delivering bad news. It can read. Small. Serena's trying to build a life. My dad finally made a sound. A throat clear. Nothing else. We heard the silence land in the room before anyone admitted it was there. I swallowed, stared at my stack of packets, and let my voice stay steady. So, I'm not invited because my job is embarrassing. Mom rushed in. Nobody said embarrassing. Serena did, I replied, and my mouth went dry. Didn't she? Mom didn't deny it. Just don't show up. Please. For once. Help your sister. I looked at the spelling list on the top page. Kindness. Family. Respect. Got it. I told her. Have a nice New Year's. After I ended the call, my screen stayed dark, and the room stayed quiet. Comments are always open for anyone who wants to leave a line. But that night, I didn't want comfort. I wanted the truth. I picked up my stapler again. It jammed on the first squeeze. New Year's Eve wasn't the first thing I'd been asked to skip. It was just the first time nobody pretended it was temporary. The next morning, Serena called like nothing had happened. Her voice was light, fast, already moving on. You're being weird, she said. Mom sounded upset. I was uninvited, I told her, standing at the sink with my coffee going cold. That tends to do it. A small laugh came through the line. Uninvited is dramatic. We're just being intentional this year. Intentional about me not being there. About keeping things clean, she replied. Elliot's world is precise. I watched steam curl off the mug. So am I. That's not what I mean. Her tone shifted, sharper. You don't fit the picture yet. Yet, she sighed. You teach second grade. It's sweet. It's just not impressive. There it was. No apology. No hesitation. At school, my classroom was loud in the way that feels earned. Chairs scraping. A kid humming too loudly while tying his shoe. Ms. Alvarez leaned into my doorway during reading block. You okay? She asked. Low. Yeah. I smiled because that's what I do. Just family stuff. She nodded, didn't push, passed me a stack of worksheets and whispered, Your kids love you. That afternoon, my principal asked me to stop by. Her office smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. There was a call, she said carefully. Nothing formal. Just concern. About what? She folded her hands. Your boundaries. I stared at her. My boundaries. She softened. I know you. This isn't an issue. I wanted you to hear it from me. When I got home, Mom had texted a long paragraph, words like misunderstanding and timing and optics. Dad sent nothing. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch, phone in my lap, and let the quiet stretch. At Revenge Sins, we've learned that silence often does more damage than shouting ever could. I didn't answer anyone that night. I lined up my lesson plans for Monday. I sharpened pencils. I packed my bag. Somewhere else. Serena was polishing a version of our family that didn't include me. I went to my grandmother's apartment the day after Serena called, not because I needed answers, because I needed quiet. The place had been empty for almost 2 years, but the building manager still let me in when I asked. He handed over the spare key without questions, just a nod and a, "Take your time." Agnes never liked clutter. The living room looked like she'd stepped out to get groceries and decided not to come back. Couch, lamp, a stack of folded newspapers tied with twine. Her cardigan was still draped over the back of the chair, sleeves turned in the way she always did. I sat where she used to sit and let my shoulders drop. She used to notice things before anyone else did. The way people talked around subjects instead of through them. The way certain compliments landed sharp. "You don't have to explain yourself to people who benefit from misunderstanding you," she'd said once. Stirring tea she didn't sweeten. I'd laughed. "That sounds like advice." "It's not," she replied, calm as always. "It's an observation." Agnes never raised her voice. She didn't need to. When Serena visited, which wasn't often, Agnes would offer cookies and listen. When Serena left, she'd look at me and say, "Your sister likes rooms that reflect her back at her." I knew what she meant. The last winter before she died, I visited every Sunday. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. She liked it when I read out loud from the paper. She liked when I told her stories about my students. "They're lucky," she said once, eyes closed. "They get you when you're still kind. Still." She smiled. "The world works hard on that." I stood and walked into her bedroom. The dresser drawer stuck on the left side, same as always. Inside, everything was neat. Socks rolled, letters stacked. On top, an envelope with my name written small and careful. Inside was a single card. "Pay attention to patterns, not apologies." That was it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mom again. I let it go to voicemail. A few seconds later, a text followed, short this time. "Your grandmother wouldn't want this kind of tension." I laughed once, quietly, in that room. Agnes wouldn't have called it tension. She would have called it information. At Revenge Sins, we've noticed how often the quiet ones leave behind the clearest instructions. I put the card back, folded the cardigan over my arm, and locked the door behind me. Samuel Weiss's office sat above a bakery that smelled like burned sugar in the afternoons. I noticed that before anything else. The scent followed me into the hallway. Sweet and off, like something done a minute too long. He greeted me with a handshake that didn't linger. "Thanks for coming in, Noelle." "I was nearby," I said, which wasn't true. I'd taken a half day and ridden the train in with my shoulders tight the whole way. We sat. He slid a folder across the table but didn't open it. He never rushed. That was his thing. "I'm not calling you in because something's wrong," he said. "I'm calling because something finished." I waited. He watched me wait. "Your grandmother believed character shows up in patterns," he went on. "Not moments. She designed the review to reflect that. The review." I repeated. He nodded. 90 days. We observe conduct tied to stewardship, public and private, communications, decisions. I kept my hands folded in my lap. And then we act, he said. Easy. Or we don't. He opened the folder just enough for me to see dates and lines. No totals. No headlines, just time. You weren't required to do anything, he added. In fact, she preferred that you didn't. I looked down. I haven't. That's consistent, he said, and there was something like approval in it, careful and contained. You were listed as secondary on purpose, not as a backup, as a measure. Measure of what? Whether the people closest to you could behave well without knowing they were being watched. My phone buzzed. A text from Serena, a link, a photo of her and Elliot at a charity dinner. Her caption was polished, the kind of smile that photographs clean. Samuel noticed the screen light up. He didn't comment. Some things have come in, he said after a beat. Emails, messages, not from you. I felt my jaw tighten. From my family. From your sister, he said. Precise. And a few others. He closed the folder. Nothing is being decided today. At Revenge Sins, we've learned that the most dangerous moments don't sound like ultimatums. They sound like process. I stood. Do I need a lawyer? He shook his head. You have one, and you're not on trial. Outside, the bakery door opened and a rush of heat spilled into the cold. I stood there longer than necessary, phone in my hand, watching another message come through. Mom this time. Short, careful. Let's all reset after New Year's. I didn't respond. I walked to the train, pulled my coat tighter, and let the city move around me without asking for anything back. Serena didn't warn me she was talking about me. I found out the way you usually do. Sideways. Elliot's name came up first. Not from him. From Mom. She mentioned you. Mom said over the phone, too casually. He asked questions. About what? Your situation. I leaned against the counter, staring at the chipped edge near the sink. What situation? Mom hesitated. I could hear her deciding how much truth was useful. She told him you've had a hard time. That teaching hasn't really worked out. I teach full-time. Yes, but she stopped herself. You know what she means. I did. Serena had always been good at that. Saying things that sounded concerned until you listened closely. Later that afternoon, Serena texted, I'm just setting expectations. Don't spiral. I didn't reply. I was in the middle of reading groups when my phone buzzed again, this time from an unfamiliar number. Ms. Parker, this is the district office. We'd like to schedule a brief check-in. The room kept going. Kids whispering, pages turning, someone dropping a pencil and freezing like it mattered. After dismissal, my principal waved me in. She closed the door gently. I want you to hear this from me, she said. There was an email. From who? She chose her words. A concerned party. Mentioned emotional boundaries. Stability. My throat tightened. Just enough to notice. And nothing, she said firmly. It's not a complaint. It doesn't go anywhere. But it exists. I nodded. I trusted her. That didn't mean it didn't hurt. At home. I listened to the voicemail Mom had left earlier. Her voice sounded tired now. Serena didn't mean harm, she said. She's under pressure. Elliot's world is demanding. My phone lit up again. Serena this time. I didn't say you were unstable. I said sensitive. There's a difference. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. You contacted my workplace. A few seconds passed. Then the dots appeared. I was trying to protect everyone. You take things personally. I sat down on the floor, back against the couch, phone heavy in my hand. The room felt smaller than it had that morning. At Revenge Sins, we've seen how quickly concern becomes permission. Another message came through. If you just stayed quiet, none of this would have happened. I set the phone face down and stayed there for a while. Not crying, not calm, just still. When I finally stood, I opened my laptop and pulled up my lesson plans for the next day. Reading comprehension. Community helpers. Words like trust and responsibility circled in blue pen from a previous week. I sharpened pencils until the sound got dull. Then I packed my bag and turned off the light. Somewhere. Serena was explaining me again. And this time, it had Elliot reached out 3 days later. Not a call, an email, short, careful. Noelle, I'm in Boston tomorrow. If you're open, I'd appreciate a coffee. No apology, no explanation. Just that. We met near the river, a place with mismatched chairs and a line that moved too slowly. He stood when he saw me, hesitated, then smiled like he wasn't sure what version of me he'd been given. Thanks for coming, he said, holding his cup with both hands. I had a free period, I replied. For once. We sat. He didn't start right away. Watched the water instead. Serena talks fast, he said finally. You don't. I shrugged. I talk when there's something to say. He nodded. That tracks. A pause settled between us. Not awkward. Just there. She told me you'd had some setbacks. He continued. That work's been hard. I teach second grade, I said. It's hard. It's also fine. He looked relieved, like he'd been waiting for permission to believe that. She said you don't like attention. I don't. I agreed. But that's different from hiding. He took a sip, then set the cup down. I looked up the Parker Literacy Trust. I didn't react. He noticed. Your name's there, he added. No photo, no bio. That was intentional. He studied me for a moment. She didn't mention that. I know. Another pause. He shifted in his chair. I asked Samuel Weiss about it. I met his eyes then. And he said some things aren't meant to be explained before they're tested. That sounds like Agnes, I said without thinking. Elliot smiled. Small. It does. He leaned back, exhaled. I'm trying to understand where the lines are. I don't draw them. I said. I just live inside them. He nodded again. That's what worries me. We sat quietly after that. People came and went. Someone dropped a spoon. A dog barked once, sharp and quick. At Revenge Sins, we've noticed how clarity often arrives without confrontation. Elliot stood first. Whatever happens, he said. Steady now. I appreciate you meeting me without asking for anything. I gathered my bag. I'm not good at asking. I'm starting to see that. We parted without promises. As I walked back toward the train, my phone buzzed. Serena's name flashed, then disappeared. I didn't open it. I watched the river instead, moving forward without commentary, carrying everything it touched. The morning of the summit. I dressed the way I dress for parent conferences. Simple, clean, nothing that asked for attention. I pinned my school badge to the inside of my coat out of habit, then took it off and set it on the counter like it didn't belong in this part of my life. Samuel Weiss texted one line. Arrive at 10, come to the side entrance. The venue sat near the harbor, the kind of place that hosted quiet money and quiet decisions. Inside, everything was soft. Carpet that swallowed footsteps, chairs set in rows facing a low stage, people speaking in small clusters like they were trading weather reports, not influence. A woman at the check-in table glanced at my name, then looked up with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Noelle Parker. You're on the list. I know. She handed me a lanyard and a folder with the schedule. The paper was thick, heavy enough to feel intentional. Serena arrived 20 minutes later like she owned the air. Hair perfect. Coat open. Smile already aimed at someone important. Mom and Dad trailed behind her, both dressed too formally for a mid-morning event. Mom's eyes moved fast, scanning faces. Dad kept his hands in his pockets like he was trying to disappear without admitting it. Serena spotted me across the lobby and froze for half a second. Then she walked over, bright and sharp. Noelle, she said, voice pitched high. This is not the time. I'm here because I was invited. Her smile tightened. Invited by who? Samuel stepped into view before I answered. He didn't rush. He didn't frown. He just existed in the space like a door that had already closed. "Good morning," he said to Serena. "Calm." Serena pivoted to him instantly. "Samuel." "Great. You can fix this." She's confused. Samuel nodded once, like he'd heard that line before. "Let's get everyone seated," he said. "We'll start on schedule." Serena's eyes flicked to my lanyard. "Take that off. You look like staff." "It's mine," I replied, and clipped it back onto my coat. She leaned closer, voice lower now. "You're trying to embarrass me." I kept my tone flat. "You managed that on your own." Mom stepped in. Urgent. "Noelle, please, just be agreeable today." Dad finally spoke. "Quiet. We can talk after." "After what?" I asked. Nobody answered. Serena's phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked past me toward the room with a practiced inhale. "That's Elliot," she murmured, smoothing her hair. "This needs to be perfect." We filed into the main room, the seats filled with people who looked like they belonged in framed photos. Board members, donors, university types, a few reporters off to the side with notebooks and neutral faces. Elliot walked in with 2 older men and a woman in a navy suit. He saw Serena, nodded politely. Then his eyes moved to me. He didn't smile big. He just acknowledged me like a person who'd met me once and remembered. Serena noticed. Her mouth tightened again. Samuel approached the front and adjusted the microphone. The sound check was brief. No ceremony. "Thank you for coming," he began. "This is the annual Benefactor Summit for the Parker Literacy Trust. Today includes an operational review and a stewardship update." Serena shifted in her seat like she was waiting for her cue. Samuel continued, steady. "As outlined in Agnes Parker's governance documents, stewardship transitions follow a 90-day review window. The review period closed last night. A quiet change moved through the room, not shock. Attention. Samuel opened a folder and looked up. "Before we proceed, one point of clarity. This is not a celebration. It's an accountability meeting." Serena lifted her hand slightly, like she was in a boardroom. "Samuel, this is unnecessary. Everyone here knows the Parker name. I'm ready to step in and modernize." Samuel didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look annoyed. "Ms. Serena Parker," he said, using her full name like a boundary. "Please let me finish." Serena's cheeks flushed. She leaned toward Mom, whispering something. Mom nodded too fast. Samuel turned a page. The review covers communications and conduct related to stewardship, specifically patterns of exclusion, misrepresentation, and reputational harm. Serena sat back, still smiling, but it looked thinner now. Samuel's gaze moved across the first row, then landed on me for a brief moment. "The trust oversees approximately $34 million in combined assets and authority," he said. "This includes restricted endowment, donor-advised funds, and property held in a foundation trust." Serena's smile widened, like the number belonged to her. Samuel didn't let it breathe. "Based on documented conduct during the review period, Ms. Serena Parker is disqualified from stewardship and board appointment effective immediately." The room stayed quiet. Not a gasp. Not a murmur. The kind of quiet that meant everyone was listening too carefully to waste sound. Serena's head snapped toward him. "That's insane." Samuel lifted a second folder. "This includes direct messages sent to multiple parties, statements made to Mr. Elliot Vaughn, and an email submitted to a school administrator implying instability and boundary concerns regarding Miss Noelle Parker." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad went still. Serena's voice turned sharp. That email was concern. Samuel's tone didn't change. It was interference. He clicked a remote. A screen behind him lit up with excerpts. Not everything. Just enough. Dates. Phrases. The pattern laid out like a timeline. Serena stood. "This is private." Samuel looked at her, calm as a locked door. Privacy is not protection from consequence. Elliot's chair scraped softly as he stood. He didn't look at Serena. I can confirm, he said, voice level, that Serena told me Noelle was unstable and dependent. She described her as a liability. Serena's face went pale, then hot again. Elliot! Stop! Samuel tapped the remote again. Agnes appeared on the screen in a simple chair, hair brushed back, hands folded. Her voice came through clear. No tremble. If you are ashamed of honest work, Agnes said, you are unfit to steward anything built to serve others. Serena's breath hitched like she'd been slapped without a hand. Samuel lowered the remote and looked toward my parents. Patricia Parker. Lawrence Parker, he said. You were listed as advisory participants. Due to documented support of exclusionary conduct, your advisory privileges are revoked. Mom's eyes filled. Dad stared at the carpet. Serena turned toward me then, voice breaking into something messy. You wanted this. I stayed seated. My hands were steady in my lap. I wanted to be left alone. I said quietly, you couldn't even manage that. People didn't rush me after. That surprised me more than anything. The room thinned slowly, like everyone had agreed not to stare. Chairs scraped, folders closed. Someone laughed too loud near the door and then stopped. Elliot spoke to Samuel in low voices. I caught pieces, documentation, next steps. Nothing urgent. Nothing dramatic. Mom found me by the window. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged in a way she'd hate if she noticed. You didn't have to let it go that far, she said, not quite accusing, not quite asking. I looked out at the water. I didn't let anything go. She pressed her lips together. Your father's embarrassed. He's quiet. I replied, he always has been. Dad stood a few feet back, hands folded, gaze fixed on the carpet. When he finally looked up, his voice came out small. I should have said something earlier. I nodded. Not forgiveness, not rejection, just acknowledgement. Serena didn't come near me again. I heard later that she stayed for 10 minutes after the meeting ended, pacing near the exit with her phone clenched in her hand. By the next week, her firm announced a leadership restructuring. Her title disappeared from the website before her name did. At school, things stayed normal, almost aggressively so. Morning announcements, lost lunch boxes, a parent emailing to ask if glitter glue washed out of sweaters. The district never followed up. The email stayed an email. Elliot sent one message that night. Thank you for meeting me where you did. I'm stepping back. I replied the next morning. Take care. At Revenge Sins. We've noticed that fallout rarely looks like an explosion. It looks like space opening up where noise used to live. I went home, reheated soup, and graded spelling tests at my kitchen table. The stapler worked this time. A year later, New Year's Eve passed without a call from my mother. I was still awake, though, sitting at my kitchen table with a stack of student essays spread out like they mattered. They did. Crayon handwriting, misspelled words, big feelings squeezed into lined paper. I'd kept my job. That part never changed. I still taught second grade, still packed lunches, still forgot my keys once a week. The difference was quieter. Serena texted in late November. Just one line. I understand now. I don't expect anything. I stared at it for a long time before locking my phone and putting it face down. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, because I wasn't ready to carry her understanding for her. Mom sends holiday cards now. Neutral ones. Landscapes. No notes. Dad mailed me a book last spring, Financial Literacy for Families. No message inside. I read the first chapter and set it on my shelf. The trust work settled into a rhythm. Meetings, votes, real changes that took time and patience. Nothing flashy, nothing about me. On the last day before winter break, one of my students stayed behind while the others lined up. Miss Parker, she said, holding out her paper, I wrote mine about you. I took it and smiled. Thank you, it said, when I grow up, I want to help people learn things so they don't feel stupid. I folded it carefully and put it in my bag. Later that night, I turned off the lights, stood by the window, and watched the year change without marking it. No champagne, no countdown, just quiet. For the first time, being left out didn't feel like loss. It felt like space. My name is Noelle Parker. I know where I belong now. At Revenge Sins, we notice when a story ends without applause. If this one stayed with you, you already know why.